everybody, this is Car RayRob, where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob.
And this is our podcast, A Copy of a Copy.
A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy.
Yes, guys, we're really excited about this episode of A Copy of a Copy. Rob, tell us what we're going to do here today.
On A Copy of a Copy, Ray, you and I, we revisit originals and remakes.
I love this.
It's a fun concept, and we decide, why did they make this movie?
What were the reasons?
We've discovered a lot of different kinds, a lot of different versions of different movies
Yes,
for
we
different
have.
reasons. You know, some of them end up being pure cash grabs, but a lot of them don't.
No,
And I don't think this one today is going to be either.
Very cool. I have not seen the remake, I guess, of this, but it's not a traditional remake.
No, not necessarily. So today we are going to be watching in celebration, if you will, of the soon-to-be-released Wicked for Good. Ray and I are going to be watching the original Wizard of Oz
Yes, we are.
and the Motown remake, The Wiz.
That's the one I've never seen.
Yeah, it's a fun movie.
I'm looking forward to it, but my knowledge of this movie, The Wiz, is that it takes Wizard of Oz on it's not a direct remake, obviously. It takes it on its own little spin.
Sure. I mean, the basic beats are the same.
Yeah.
You know, because
Okay.
they're both based off of the book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. But yes, this kind of takes that Detroit sound, that Motown sound, and it is an all African American cast. Where you have Judy Garland in the original, this one has
Mhm.
Diana Ross.
Okay.
Michael Jackson plays.
She was not playing a 14-year-old, was she?
No, a little bit though. Yeah, a little bit older. She's more probably in her 20s. She's in her 20s, you know.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson plays the Scarecrow.
Okay. I think I knew that.
Nipsey Russell plays the Tin Man, and Ted Ross plays the Cowardly Lion.
Wow. Now, do we even need to go through the cast of the original? Because, like, Judy Garland is obviously, you said, pretty darn
Judy
famous.
Garland,
I
Frank
think.
Morgan, Ray
Yeah.
Bolger, Jack Haley. You know, I mean, it's classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
It's pretty hard to not. I maybe find people in our audience who have probably not seen The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I think you'd be hell bent to try to find anybody who, at the very least, didn't know the story or just the visuals of it. You know,
Yeah.
if you looked at a still from The Wizard of Oz and say, "That's The Wizard of Oz."
Right. You'll know. You'll know.
The
Now,
Wiz is a little different though.
The Wiz is different because I think even in my mind, to be fair, like I think I have some images in my brain that I think might be The Wiz, but also might be Return to Oz, that like really weird
I love
1985
Return
movie.
to Oz. Oh man, that's
It's really
such an underrated movie.
It's creepier though, isn't it?
It is creepier,
Yeah.
and it is an underrated movie. And there are elements of The Wiz that are a little bit creepier. They go a little bit harder. But that's also because it's directed by Sidney Lumet. So that's also kind of a thing that maybe a lot of people may not realize. 12 Angry Men, Dog Day Afternoon, Network.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get much of a heavy hitter, much more of a heavy hitter than Sidney Lumet.
Do you have a preference?
I mean, I think so. Obviously, they're both musicals in their own
Yeah.
regard. The original has music, and The Wiz clearly has music. I do love the Motown sound.
Yeah.
So I think you'll kind of find how infectious these songs are. Also, The Wiz is much like Wicked, based on a Broadway show.
Okay.
So it was a Broadway show first, and then this is the adapted movie version of that musical.
Very cool.
Kind of like what we did with Hairspray.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Okay, good. Now, we always kind of like to think about why they make these remakes. And maybe it's because of the success of the stage show, and maybe let me ask you. I know we kind of save our final answer for the end, but like, was this a remake because they wanted representation? They thought Motown was going to be a good fit.
I mean, I think both, and
Yeah.
I think you'll see as you watch the movie. That I think that's a good way to look at it going into it. Yeah, I mean, if we had to kind of come up with a new version of a remake, kind of what we've done in the previous episodes. I'd say this one was more of a representation
Like
remake.
Hamilton kind of idea.
Kind
Obviously, that's
of,
not a
yeah.
remake of anything but actual
Right.
history.
Sure.
But yeah, of that vein.
Yeah.
All right.
But you'll see throughout the movie, you'll kind of see the flavor of Motown and the production design, obviously the choreography and the music, and just the overall feel. So it's a very fun movie.
All right. Do you even need to watch Wizard of Oz? I don't think I do.
I'm gonna.
We're gonna.
Yeah,
we're gonna.
We're gonna. I can
But do
agree.
we need to? I don't think. I think
Probably
every
not.
scene is burned into my brain.
It is true, but just watching these two back to back, I think maybe it'll pull something out, something
Yeah.
we've never seen before.
Yeah, we have to be responsible. We have to do that.
Definitely.
So we're going to do that.
We're
We're
gonna
going
do
to
that
go
right
watch
now.
Wizard of Oz, and then we're going to go watch The Wiz, and then we're going to come back and talk about it. If you guys haven't seen one or both of these movies, or if it's just been a minute since you've seen it, feel free to pause the podcast, go check them out. When you're done, come back and listen to me and Rod's conversation on this Copy of a Copy episode.
Ray and Rob are currently watching the film. Wait, films? There are two? How long is this supposed to take? I've got places to be, you know. Ray and Rob will be right back when they're done watching the films.
All right, everyone. Ray and I are back from Oz. We took the hot air balloon. We took the tornado.
You did. I took the yellow cab.
Ray took the yellow cab. There were so many ways to get back from Oz. I don't understand how Dorothy got stuck there in the first
We
place.
didn't use any slippers. We
No
didn't use any
slippers.
But we now have the opportunity to talk about this remake and kind of compare lots of different pathways we could choose to talk about. A lot of things I think to discuss real quick.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities between the two movies, as obviously you would expect.
Yes,
Same
the
core
bones
story.
are the same.
The bones are the same, but and even like the musical elements of it are similar, but there's also a lot of differences. And but with a movie that's this iconic,
Mhm.
that's definitely everybody. Even if you've never seen The Wizard of Oz, the Wizard of Oz.
I think you
just
have.
by looking
Even
at
if
it.
you think you've never seen it, you have.
Right, exactly. I think we need to go through this methodically, character by character, and then we kind of can talk about some of those broader similarities and differences between The Wizard of Oz and The Wiz.
Let's not do Dorothy right off the bat.
No, let's save her. Let's save Dorothy.
Because I actually think the major improvements from The Wiz, like on the story, maybe not as a movie overall, but like the major improvements, I think happen with a lot of the supporting characters in my mind.
Yeah.
Do you want to just start with the Scarecrow? Should we meet him in order like Dorothy does?
Let's do it. That is a great idea. Let's meet these characters as Dorothy meets them.
So we have Michael Jackson.
Yep, Michael Jackson
as the Scarecrow. And you know what I think? Like one thing I really appreciate with The Wiz is that there's just a little more depth, I think, in every one of these quote unquote side characters.
Sure.
With why what not having a brain means or
Right.
not having a heart means. And so with Michael Jackson, they have this wonderful use of the crows.
Right.
Who they're people that talk down to you, that make you feel stupid.
Yeah.
That make you feel trapped on a pole.
Yeah.
And you can't move and you can't do anything, you can't succeed. Really, when there's no other proof, then that's their opinions. It's kind of
Right.
what it was kind of felt like to me.
Absolutely, and it's interesting you bring that up. And so I think one thing that we kind of talked about in the before section, when we kind of looked at both of these movies and thought to ourselves beforehand, why would they have made this? And the first thing that really popped into our minds was representation.
Right.
And I think that after rewatching them, I think that's clear. That's what it is.
Sure.
And there's a lot of reasons for that. And I think there is a lot of underlying metaphor about the Black experience in America. And I found a great article from Essence magazine about that. So I'm going to sprinkle that in a little bit as we go through each character, because there's a bit about each character in that. So you talked about the Michael Jackson's The Scarecrow and his almost trapped nature up on the post. you know, the writer of the article was Sharon Stockard Martin, and she talked about how the Scarecrow is seen as kind of like the result of the complete undoing of the black male post slavery, like even slavery, and then even into like Jim Crow and stuff like that. You know, Jim Crow.
Right.
You know, so it's like that idea of them telling him he's no good and he can't do anything, and,
Right.
and he's stuck up there and he has no other choice. And
Brains full of junk.
right, exactly, and you know he's kind of pulling those, you know, quips and quotes out of himself,
Yeah.
you know, kind of at random,
Right.
to kind of make that point. I agree. I think that depth added a lot to the Scarecrow character.
Yeah. Now there's you know, when you think back to the 1939 version of the Scarecrow, there is this funness to him.
Definitely.
That physical comedy
Yeah.
of just like this thing that hasn't walked in years. Like
Yeah.
I don't think Michael Jackson was able to pull off that.
Yeah, I think Ray Bolger in that regard was superior as the
Yeah.
Scarecrow. He was able to capture that silliness of a walking scarecrow.
Right. But Michael Jackson actually does a decent little job acting here a little bit. A couple faces every now and then. I'm like, okay, that's not a really professional actor
Sure.
there. But like obviously then when we talk about music and dancing,
Right.
Michael Jackson's going to win out on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially at this time
Yeah.
in his career. I mean, I think, you know, with Michael Jackson, it was, I'm sure it could feel like a novelty.
Yeah.
You know, and we've kind of talked about that even when we did like Hairspray with Zac Efron and stuff like that. Because I
Sure.
could kind of see that being a similar kind of casting choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like of those two gentlemen at their ages, you know, being in these properties. But, you know, obviously with Michael Jackson, he was a much bigger star.
Sure, yeah.
So I definitely
king.
see why they would want him to be the Scarecrow.
Yeah. And it just, you know, I think both these movies do a good job too of like when you think of the Scarecrow, right, and this guy that doesn't have a brain, like the movie does a good job of like, you know, he is always the one that comes up with the ideas.
Right.
And this is true of the original movie too, you know. And it's like I just like that like he comes up with ideas. You as an audience member need to see like he does have a brain. You know,
Right.
he doesn't need like actually be handed a brain
Right.
at the end of the movie. He has a brain, and but the movie doesn't like beat you over the head with like, hey, great idea, Scarecrow. You really did a good job of thinking of that. You know,
Right.
like the movie's just like you need to notice that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
And the
that's-
original does this.
the original does a
the
great
same
job of
thing.
it too.
Yeah, the
No,
original
no, I
does the same
mean,
thing in that regard.
you know, I love that there's that complexity but simplicity in the storytelling, even in the 1939 version, or especially in so.
Yeah.
Then they find the Yellow Brick Road, which was annoying me at first. Like when
Right.
Diana Ross is like, follow the Yellow Brick Road, and then she's in this like,
Presented Oz in The Wiz as
Yeah.
opposed to The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah,
And I
'cause
think again it goes to that cultural kind
Yeah.
of significance.
we did kind of skip right over Munchkin Town.
We
actually.
really did. So let's pause for a second and talk a little bit about that, because I do think that kind of having this very New York centric, big metropolitan city centric version of Oz made a lot of sense.
Yes.
If you're really speaking about, again, the black experience in America, especially at that time.
Sure.
And, you know, having this kind of almost degradation, you know, of what Oz was kind of supposed to be. You
Yeah.
know, like Oz, you know, in the original is this whimsical place that's, you know, all of these things, you know, happen magically and it, you know, kind of envelops you. This almost seems like a weird, like, undertone of danger the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not someplace you really want to be. You do want to get out of there a little
Right.
quickly. I love the Munchkins like becoming like street art come to life.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I
really
love
thought
that.
those effects were pretty cool there.
Yeah.
And it's a quicker scene though than in the movie. It kind of feels like they get in and get out pretty quick, like get her on her way.
Yeah. Well, I think the whole movie kind of plays faster in that way.
Even though it's not, it's much longer.
Right, it's much longer, but I do think, you know, because there's not really, you know, obviously in the original, you know, there is a setup of these characters in the
Right,
the real
right.
world before she goes to Oz.
Yeah.
Whereas there's not that
Yeah.
in The Wiz. Like
I
these
think-
characters don't appear
No.
in
And
in the
I
real
appreciate that. I think I've said before, like I hate when movies do like it didn't really happen. It was all a dream,
Right.
or was it? Like I'm like, no, either tell me it happened or it didn't. So
world. Right.
I kind of appreciate that. But
Sure. But you're going back to the Munchkins. I did also really appreciate Thelma Carpenter as Miss One. So they kind of broke that character out a little bit, and so having Glinda be the overarching good witch for the whole film, it's like they broke it into two. So you had Miss One, and then Glinda the Glinda character, which is Lena Horne. You see her, but she really like appears at the end where she has her musical number. But I liked that kind of. I just liked the moxie, if you will, of Miss One, and kind of how she interacts with Dorothy and the rest of the Munchkins. Yeah,
I thought it was kind of interesting that you don't get exposed to the Wicked Witch of the West.
It's interesting. Yeah, I have a question about that, but go ahead.
Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting. Maybe I don't know if interesting is the right word, but it was definitely a choice to not use her here and not have that overhanging danger throughout the entire movie.
I actually have that question. That's what I was gonna say. Is like, did it take away? When you've got Elphaba, basically, this black cloud over the entire first movie, or the original, and then in this, Eveline is kind of almost seen as like an afterthought after they go to Oz. Does that detract? From
Well, I think if you're in one way, like you already mentioned, I do think like the sense of danger is in other areas, so that's kind of helpful. But I think like if you say you were never exposed to the Wizard of Oz, and then you like get to that scene where he like go get her, go kill her, you'd be like, who do they have to kill? Like, why do they have to kill her? Like, why would I like go kill somebody? Like, it might be a little weird at that point. If you weren't exposed to like the original movie and kind of know, no, the person we're gonna get is pretty bad.
Yeah. No, I can completely agree with that. I think we'll talk more about the similarities between Eveline and Elphaba, but I agree. I do think that not having that overarching sense of danger, that big bad through the majority of the movie did kind of detract a little bit from the Wiz.
Yeah. So, but Michael Jackson and Dorothy ease on down the road a little bit.
Down the road.
They go to an amusement park, which I kind of like this usage of the like finding the Tin Man or this setting for where to find the Tin Man. Yeah, Nipsey Russell as the Tin Man being squashed by a big old Tin Woman.
Yeah, that was a choice. It was like teeny. It was very. It was funny. It was a visually funny experience as opposed to just finding him like frozen in the middle of the forest like they do for the original Tin Man.
Yeah,
Frank Morgan.
But they still got to get him moving again. And then he gets his own number, and this is where I first kind of realized and noticed that like all these different side characters are gonna sing their own songs that are unique to them, that are like brand new to them. Where like in the original, the songs are like does the Tin Man, Scarecrow, and Lion all get to sing? Yes, but they sing the same song just with different words. So it's like it feels less musical. Because it's just one melody over and over and over. It's a classic, iconic. Right. If I only had a brain. It's iconic. It's great, but it is repeated over and over and over.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I said Frank Morgan ago. It's Jack Haley. I mixed up the character. Jack Haley plays the Tin Man in the original, and I think he has a sweetness to him that I do think Nipsey also has. Mm-hmm. I think the design. I like the. I guess the styling of the Tin Man and the Wiz, it's a little more intricate. It's a little bit more interesting. It feels a little more like he's made of trash, almost like clockwork trash.
Which like a Disney animatronic, like an old kind of like bad Disney animatronic.
Right. So I appreciate that kind of evolution of the design, where obviously the original Tin Man is very sleek, silver, and it's clean,
Very
clean.
That's
the thing. That's kind of that difference between Wizard of Oz.
He's a little rusty, but
a little, sure.
Because he gets polished in that one scene where that thing is running over him.
Then he's really shiny. But I can agree. But you mentioned the amusement park. I think that adds so much to this scene and his song and everything, kind of amongst this abandoned amusement park, like I said, this juxtaposition to Oz and the Wiz and Oz and the Wizard of Oz, I think is very striking.
Yeah. It's like because in the original, he doesn't have a heart. It just means literally there's nothing in his chest cavity.
Right.
Where again they kind of expand on stuff, and in the Wiz, not having a heart really means not that he doesn't necessarily have the ability to to love things. It's like he's taken advantage of people or he's done
Right.
bad things. So it's like he, like we all feel like if you call somebody in real life heartless, you're not saying they don't have a heart,
Yeah.
but you're saying they don't act like they do. And that's kind of where this Tin Man comes from.
It's great. And it's great you bring that up because going back to this Essence article, Sharon Martin writes about how the Tin Man is someone who has to develop a hard exterior to protect soft feelings from the inevitable hurt of a hostile environment.
Right.
And it's how the black male was kind of made to have to survive in slavery.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And like having to develop that hard exterior and not have those feelings and do those things sometimes that are, maybe not seen as great just to survive.
Right.
Kind of just for that, the pure need of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Nipsey's great. Very leaky though. When he does have to cry, it's almost like too much. But
That's comedically leaky.
yeah, because again, the Tin Man has to save the day in the poppy scene.
Yeah.
And I do also like, they all do get their moments to shine, kind of like in the original, but maybe more so.
Yeah.
Like, obviously Tin Man saves them from the poppies, which was an interesting use of like that scene. Like it was more like a drug nightclub.
Yeah, they're actually prostitutes. Like,
Are they?
Yeah, they're supposed to be kind of like red light district prostitutes.
Yeah.
So.
But so Tin Man gets to save him from then. Obviously, we said Scarecrow gets all the ideas, but then there's Lion.
Right.
Who we meet before the poppy seed, and I kind of like him breaking out of the what museum is that? Well, that's supposed to be.
Isn't it the library?
Oh yeah,
the New York Public Library.
Yeah,
just like in the beginning of Ghostbusters.
Right. And I guess I saw something online like obviously like that is on set. That's not the real library, but I think the World Trade Center. They are actually in front of the World Trade Center at that part.
Oh really? I did not know that.
Yeah, they had to work very quickly. Yeah. I heard, but yeah, I like how the line breaks out of the statue.
Yeah. Ted Ross, I think, is great as the Cowardly Lion. He's also great as Bitterman and Arthur, which is a personal favorite of both of ours.
Completely different, like on the ends of the emotional spectrum. Characters like Bitterman is so like tight and like emotionless, where the Lion is not.
No, yeah, I mean he's so big and bombastic, and I think he just does it so well. I think his song is great.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, kind of having it out there in front of the New York Public Library is really great. Which, again, it kind of goes back to this, again, what we've kind of said about this juxtaposition between the two worlds. I feel like, having Dorothy meet her three companions just in the woods is fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, and it works. It's classic. It's iconic. It's great. But I like this idea of having each character being met in a different environment.
Yeah, different setting.
Yeah. I think it adds something to the experience.
I think it does too. It individualizes them much more.
Yeah.
It lets you add into that like these themes of these characters and adds more depth to them.
Yeah.
Which makes the the ending when things change more rewarding, I think.
Yeah.
And again, like Lion gets his moment too, where he has to save them all because, like, when they're in the subway and like the subway is coming to life, he gets to show that he has courage.
Yeah,
that he fights these trash cans and he fights these Attack of the Killer columns.
Right.
Which is, I was like,
I love that whole scene. Just like the kind of bonkers nature of it, I think is great. Before we move on,
hey, in New York, anything can kill you. And that's a great.
That's what we're trying to say. There's danger everywhere, but it kind of going back to what the Essence article real fast. One thing that Sharon Martin wrote about the Cowardly Lion is he's obviously the self-defeating man who is paralyzed by fear and internal narratives that discourage action.
Yeah.
So it's like once you've been beaten down so much, you can't. It's hard to get going again because you think you're no good.
Right.
And similar, I guess, somewhat to the Scarecrow in that way, but kind of the fear element of it, I think, is a little bit more with the Cowardly Lion than say the Scarecrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Bert Lahr is great as the Lion too, just as the original. He's great.
Iconic. I mean, probably
not a bad performance. I
no,
say that
he might be the best like character in the original one. Like it's so bombastic. The all the time. Or, he's just so into it.
Well, and his going back to kind of like the physical nature of it. We kind of talked about the Scarecrow and how Ray Bolger had a little bit of a better sense of the funny for the Scarecrow. The Tin Man, I think, with both Jack Haley and Nipsey Russell. I think they both kind of played it right in their own ways. 'Cause it's almost like a shamble,
Yeah.
with how they move and things like that. With Bert Lahr and Ted Ross, you're right. There has to be almost like an acrobatic, bombastic nature to them.
Yep.
So like when they're jumping off of things, and because both
Yeah,
of
like
them
a
do
cat.
that, right?
Yeah.
Both of them do that. They both do the the leaping and the bounding and all of that, and they both do it really really well.
Yeah, they do.
And Ted Ross does it in platforms. I don't know if you noticed.
I did. I did. His paws are like heels.
So good on him.
Yeah, that ups the level of difficulty for sure.
Right.
So, I guess we could think about going to Oz. I will say that maybe my least favorite scene in The Wiz was like the outside on the World Trade Center part, like that song.
Sure.
I'm like, I don't know if this is adding really much to me.
Sure.
I know they were kind of doing the horse of a different color vibe,
Yeah.
which was cool, but it is a longer movie,
Yeah.
than the original. I'm like, I don't know if this did anything for me. But what it did do was I got to hear the wizard's voice a little, and I was like, that sounds like there's no way that the wizard is Richard Pryor, is it? 'Cause I did not know. I didn't I've tried going into this as much spoiler free as I can, but that
Sure.
voice that I was hearing coming from the top of the World Trade Center was very Richard Pryor like.
Yeah, I specifically did not mention that Richard Pryor was
You
in the beginning
son
section
of
for
a-
that very reason. Because I kind of wanted that one to hit you, because it's not something you would expect
No.
in any way, shape, or form.
But when when you see him like exposed,
Uh-huh.
it's like it is a perfect casting, because that's like Richard Pryor's like go to I think when almost when he's the funniest, when he's like on the defense and he's just like on his back pedal and he's like, but I'm just sorry,
Yeah.
I would never try to do a Richard Pryor impersonation. He's too iconic, but
Right.
but one thing I thought was very interesting was like, when you go and meet him as his like scary wizard self, it's that metal giant head,
Right.
which is so much closer to what they use in Wicked.
Right.
Like that is like almost like Wicked like took that from this movie. You know what I mean?
I could see that. Absolutely. And I think that it's while in the original that kind of projected head was
Yeah.
cool, like,
Yeah.
and especially for that time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, absolutely cool. I there is something I do like about kind of that large mechanical head element to it, and
Yeah.
you're right when you brought up Wicked. I love it in Wicked. I think what they
Oh,
do
it's
with
great.
Wicked is so good, and I could definitely see them looking at the Wiz and saying, okay, yeah, let's build off of that.
Yeah. I mean, if you can use a
Menacing.
floating hologram of yourself with these fire tornadoes, you are a wizard. So
Right.
we need to pull it back because he's not a wizard.
Right.
But yeah, I thought Richard Pryor was great.
Yeah, I know you didn't. I just taking a step back for a second. I know you didn't. You said you weren't really into the scene, but I do like the stuff. I personally do like the stuff before the song,
Mhm.
before they go see the wizard, and kind of this idea that kind of talking about Oz as two different places, whereas again the original movie kind of has it as this kind of very like jovial, like metropolitan place, very
Right.
bright, very colored. Seems again kind of quirky and interesting. Whereas in the Wiz, there's this idea of like chasing the trends.
Sure.
Which I'm sure, again, living in in New York at that time, it's like,
Yeah.
it was very much commentary on that, where it's like, it's the glitz and the glam, and like,
It's cool today, it's not cool tomorrow.
right, exactly. And you have these people that are up on high that are telling you what's cool and what's not
Right,
cool,
sure.
and like you're constantly just changing yourself to meet their expectations.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that a great deal.
Well, and I agree. Like I like that commentary, but like it isn't like serve the movie necessarily, because like
Sure.
the people of Oz aren't a character of this movie. But I get like if you're doing a musical, you need time for like costume changes and set stuff up, and so sometimes
Sure.
you need some of these songs that kind of can accomplish that goal.
Sure.
And having something that is like on point, like
Yeah.
metaphorically, is really important, and that's excellent.
But I think there's something to be said about building on the world that you've just come through.
Sure.
So you know what I mean? You're like coming from these places where it's, you're having, like I said earlier, like the degradation and the destruction and things like that. And you're like moving through the abandoned amusement park, and, you're going to all these different places. And then you kind of find what the pinnacle of that society is.
Yeah.
And it's this, and it's this.
Yeah.
and you can tell again there's kind of something off about it, which I think is again is kind of that whole idea,
Right.
you know. So I don't know. Like I said, I think it works for both work. You know, obviously this isn't like a better best kind of
Yeah,
better
no, we're not
worst
trying to do
situation
that.
of like Wizard of Oz and Oz or with Wiz, but I do think I appreciate what both movies did, and especially trying to be their own thing.
Yeah. And then we have Dorothy's ultimate decision, in pretty much in both movies: either give a guy your shoes or go commit murder.
Right.
And she always chooses murder.
She always chooses murder. What does
I
that
love
tell you
these
about Dorothy?
shoes.
What does that tell you about Dorothy?
Yeah, she loves her shoes. And the person she has to murder in the first one, we're all about it. We're like,
Right.
yeah, that she's
Elphaba.
yeah, we gotta go
Till
kill
you
her.
see Wicked, and then you're like, nope, not okay.
Shouldn't have done that. Should have given the man his shoes.
Right.
But in this one, as we already kind of mentioned, it is kind of a character we've never seen before, and I'm kind of like, where? I mean, it does, I think, hurt the character, you
Yeah.
know, the Wicked Witch character, because the 5 minutes she's in the movie, I think she's got a great personality. She's a huge character. I love like that she's a sweatshop worker underground. I love everything about her. I love that the monkeys are motorcycle riders, like a Harley motorcycle gang.
Yeah.
But they're just in the movies for so little. There's no real punch there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I wish they had done more with it. I wish that maybe Eveline had some kind of a scene earlier in the movie. I wish the flying monkeys had been in the movie a little bit more. Something that, again, that constant danger that's kind of chasing them from place to place that they're trying to escape. I do kind of wish they had done that. I like the design of the characters. Like you said, I love Eveline's design. And yeah, I'm with you 100%. I wish they had done more because I do think it detracted from that the overall stakes of the movie.
Yeah, and Dorothy like never really interacting with her before this point, kind of, I don't know. In some ways, maybe, I don't know if anticlimactic is the right word, but one thing I did here too is that original Michael Jackson song, because I just checked up the IMDb before as we finished these, just to kind of do some background notes because I found it very interesting, but. That original Michael Jackson song, "You Can't Win," what I think I read was in the stage show is what do they call them? Twinkies?
The Winkies.
The Winkies?
Yeah.
It was originally a Winkie song, telling Dorothy she can't win, but then decided just to move it for whatever reason.
Interesting.
And turned into the Michael Jackson song
which he knocks out of the park because again, it's Michael Jackson.
Right.
So.
Right. And maybe that's why it's like this is just like perfect for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so maybe there was going to be more, or maybe in the stage show there's more with Evilly. They just for editing purposes or whatever reorganize some stuff. But yeah, like we said, I think she's great, but she's just not in it enough. And,
not nearly enough.
And I think though, it's funny too because like obviously the way the Wicked Witch dies is kind of lame and kind of in both like that waters her can just absolutely kill her right off the bat.
Which Wicked. As great and does expand on quite a bit in the book and in the movie.
And I haven't seen part 2, so I would love to see that explanation. Because I'm also like, you are in a warehouse that has a giant sprinkler system set up. Where if you knew water would kill you, you probably would be like, I'll risk the building burning down.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, she still melts in a cool way. I think the when you look back at the Wizard of Oz, like some of the stuff they do, like her melting scene, like back. To pull that off their knives.
So good.
So impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it goes without saying, and this, again, I don't even necessarily think it's just because of the amount of time she's in the movie, but Margaret Hamilton as Elphaba is just, it is iconic. It is probably one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic.
Didn't it ruin her career because she couldn't do anything
after that? I think so. I mean, and I heard she was like the sweetest lady, which is like the other horrible part of it. Is she plays this character that becomes it becomes known for this like horrible character, but she is just like the sweetest lady. So it's like, but in The Wiz, it is Mabel King.
Right.
I mean, obviously, she just has like a gravity to her. It's just like so good, and I mean, so she for kind of what we've seen in some movies, she works with what she's got. So she's given a little, but she makes a lot of it.
Yeah.
But in the end, you got to give the check to Margaret Hamilton because that's just anybody as we've said before, if you've never seen The Wizard of Oz, you know who Elphaba is.
Right.
And that squarely sits on the shoulders of Margaret Hamilton.
Yeah, that is the classic witch
Yeah.
that I think, what everybody uses in Halloween decorations and stuff now.
Yeah.
And, whenever they kind of dispose of her and they go back to the wizard and we get to see Richard Pryor in his, like, most Richard Pryor-ness. I did like the fact that he doesn't try to, like, give them fake brains or fake medals and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because that's one thing I'm like, with, like, in the original that I'm like, I don't really appreciate, like, when they go back and he's like, here, Scarecrow, here's a diploma.
Right,
like,
yeah.
That's
You
not
went
what I
to-
asked for, sir.
Right. Well, it is a brain, but this is a brain on paper. It's
Yeah.
like, no, but I didn't learn all the things to get this
I'm
thing.
full of paper already. I don't
Right.
want more paper.
Right.
But, because I'm like, but the movie, as we already kind of said, like, it already established that he had a brain.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
he doesn't
So it's
need
yeah,
anything.
right.
And the movie does a good enough job where you don't need these tokens at the end.
Right, yeah.
We can tell that Tim Ent has a heart. He's been lovely this whole time. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I kind of like that they kind of just got rid of that aspect.
Yeah, no, I can agree. It does. I will say it kind of does make the end feel a little small.
Yeah.
By
Yeah, I agree.
comparison, and that's. I feel like we'll get to Dorothy in a second because
Oh, yeah. Forgot about her.
Yeah. Well, and so we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, I think so much of that scene is supposed to sit on her shoulders,
Yeah.
whereas like that's not necessarily the case, because obviously you got Glinda coming in. I mean, and she does too in this, where Lena Horne has her big song
Yeah.
and all of that, which is fine. Again, I don't know if it comes off as iconic. It doesn't. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
It does not come off as iconic as Glinda coming in and the clicking of the heels and
Right.
all of that. Like, it's that just it's. She's not. They're not going to top that.
No,
You know what I
no.
mean? And I think that's just. And they didn't
There's
try.
no place like home.
They almost
Yeah.
didn't try.
Yeah.
Which they didn't try. So.
Can't
but-
surpass it if you don't.
Right.
try.
Right. But yeah, I will say that is one issue with me. Well, I agree that I don't like the whole handing off of the fake tokens and things like that. I do wish they had done a little more in that last scene to give it more weight.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. So I like some of the stuff they took out. I also like the wizard going on the hot air balloon by himself because it kind of just feels weird. Like, what did we do the last 5 minutes? Like, they've been preparing for her to go on this hot air balloon with him, and then she doesn't even do it. Like, what
Yeah.
did we just spend these? So they get rid of all that kind of peripheral stuff, which is
Yeah.
kind of good. But like I said, it doesn't. They don't replace it with something that is necessarily better, I guess.
Right. I almost don't even replace it with anything.
Yeah.
Because it's just okay.
Yeah.
They nod to the hot air balloon, obviously, because that's obviously how Herman Smith
Yep.
got to Oz.
That's the wizard's name.
That's the wizard's real name in The Wiz. But, because he was running for dog catcher,
Right.
which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
But, so it's, they nod to those things, but then they do nothing else.
Yeah.
And I think it's because, like you said, they rested on Lena Horne's song, which is fine. And then, Diana Ross has a song.
Probably her best song,
I
guess.
I
But
guess,
like I
yeah.
said, it's not very
right.
iconic.
But
or
I
anything.
just don't think that was enough
Yeah.
to carry the weight in the scene
Yeah.
that they needed. So let's talk about Dorothy.
We have to.
So, one thing about The Wiz is that it was critically panned as a film when
Yeah.
it came out. And obviously that was not the case with the original. The original was beloved pretty much from the jump. And I think part of it is, and from what I've read, is they did change a bit from the stage play to the movie. But then there's some things that they didn't change. And one was Diana Ross. But the problem is that the stage play had happened a little years before they made the movie.
Right.
So Diana Ross aged a little bit.
She's too dang old.
So there was a lot of she's too dang old
Yeah.
to play Dorothy. And I think there's some fairness to that, and some unfairness to that. But before I say, Ray, what did you think? Do you think Diana Ross was too old?
I found it jarring at
you?
first.
Okay.
Where, I actually had to pause the movie and be like, all right, what is going on here? How old is she?
Right.
And how old is she in real life? How old is she playing her? And they do, I feel like they specifically say in the movie, you are 24 and you are a teacher. You need, so they're
Right.
trying to tell the audience, we know she's not 16.
Right.
But I found it jarring because I do think in my mind, this is supposed to be about a girl who is trying to go back home.
Yeah.
A little girl trying to go back home, and then that they're just you can't do that with a 33-year-old woman.
Sure. Yeah, but so this is my fair and unfair kind of thing
Yeah.
with this. So I think it's fair because it is a big difference between the original Dorothy and
Who was really, I think, 14.
yeah,
in
Judy
that
Garland I
movie.
think was 16.
16, but playing a 14-year-old.
right at that time. So I do think it's fair in that regard where you're like, okay, well, Judy Garland was 16.
Double her age, literally.
Right. So it's like, okay, this seems a bit off. However, I do think that these movies are saying two separate things, and I think this is where I think it's unfair, because the original movie is talking about the fear, is talking about how Dorothy Gale wants to leave home. She wants to go find her place in the world over the rainbow and all of these things, and leave this humdrum farm life and find something more.
Right.
Whereas the Wiz is about Dorothy Gale being afraid to leave home.
Sure.
Like, she doesn't want to leave home.
Right.
And I feel like if you're saying that from the perspective of a 14-year-old, it doesn't have the same oomph, because it's like, we're not leaving home for a while anyway, so you're fine. But
sure.
Dorothy Gale in her mid-20s being afraid to leave home, well, it's like, well, you're a failure to launch.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, she's at teaching, so she's doing a job, clearly, but and she's making all these, well, I like the kids, I like the neighborhood, I like these things. Yeah. And Aunt M's like, you need to get out of here.
Right.
Because one, you're cramping me and Uncle Henry's space. You know, we want to get down, and you're still here. Yeah. And it's like,
and I'm like, what world is like? I'm like, what world does like high school get paid more than elementary school? Like, I feel like I don't really think that's a pay raise necessarily, but I get the point they were pushing.
Yeah, right.
But I will say though, I do think I settle into her age. Like, I think like it's like it's jarring at first, but I do think you settle into it. But I will say then, all right, I'm settled into her being 24, but I don't know if I ever buy into, like, I don't know if there's ever any meat on the bone for her in this, really.
Sure. Are you trying to say she's too skinny? Diana, eat a hamburger.
Sure. But like, there's like, she doesn't really, like you said, she doesn't have a lot, like a great over the rainbow moment number.
Yeah. Well, and
she kind of plays second fiddle to the other three. It feels like.
I completely agree with that. I that was one of the things that I kind of read at the time, and I can completely agree with, is that she feels like she's just kind of relegated to these kind of almost throwaway ballads.
Yeah.
And where, Michael Jackson, Nipsey Russell, Ted Ross gets these like big bombastic songs that are theirs.
Right.
You kind of mentioned it before, where in the original it seemed like the Three Companions were their song all kind of built off of the same song.
Yeah.
In the Wiz, they each get their own very specific song to them. And I think, Diana Ross is obviously, a dynamite
of course,
singer.
She can sing.
Right. So I felt like she could have had one of those like real like big bombastic, grooving numbers, and she never really got it. She was part of some, but she never got one that was just hers.
Right.
And like you said, that I even wrote it down. I think it's which song was it that I felt like was kind of like her, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which it was the As Soon As I Get Home, which is her ballad after she gets to Oz.
Right.
Which I thought was interesting, because she kind of had her Over the Rainbow, which I guess makes sense, and almost kind of like an anti-Over the Rainbow song, because it's like, I want to get home.
Yeah,
like, I'm already going, I want to get home. Like, so it's that anti-Over the Rainbow song. But I don't know if it hit with the same weight as Over the Rainbow.
It doesn't, unfortunately. It doesn't. Like I said, some of the other characters, like my favorite song, I think, was the Lions, I guess, maybe.
Sure. Yeah, it was great.
So, none of them hit the iconicness of The Wizard of Oz, because the movie just isn't as iconic as The Wizard of Oz. But like I said, like, Dorothy she just kind of felt much more like a passenger. Where, like, even in like the original, because maybe she gets abducted and they, it's about saving her.
Yeah.
Or, it kind of just felt like she was just tagging along with them more than in the original, where it feels like they are tagging along with her journey.
Well, and I think part of that comes down to the slippers, and I can think, having Elphaba be that overarching black cloud that's constantly like, I want those slippers, I want those slippers, I want those slippers. Like, it puts the focus on her.
Right, she's the central focus.
Yeah, where that's just not the case in the Wiz. So when you take that out, like, the slippers themselves feel like like nothing. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's basically like furniture in this narrative in the
They don't
Wiz.
pop on screen.
No, they don't.
I don't know if they went with silver to be more of like a disco ball or something.
Sure,
But,
but to be fair, and this is funny. So in the book, they're silver.
okay,
They're not
red.
ruby. So
Yeah.
that was because they went from the black and white to the
Right.
color, which I want to circle back to that. But that was why they did ruby, was because they would pop on screen.
Yeah.
But in the book, they are silver. So in that regard, the Wiz is being faithful to the original source material.
Yeah. But like I said, the red is probably I think that's a good choice on film.
Definitely,
You know, because
definitely.
it does pop. You always see those shoes no matter what scene she's in.
Right.
Where the slippers in the Wiz, it's kind of like you don't really notice if she's not nice shoes on or not. You'd forget about it. There's no reason to think about it because there's nobody else that wants them.
Yeah.
Till the very end of the movie.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think in that regard, I mean, and again, it's just probably completely unfair overall. But even though Diana Ross is fantastic for what she can do, I guess in
Sure.
my mind, like she's not great, I admit, but
Yeah.
like and this is my point, I guess, is she's not Judy Garland. You know what I mean? And
Right.
like,
She's not an
gotta,
actress,
right.
really.
Well, and that's fair, and that's fair. I mean, to a degree, I can agree with that.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't need to say that disparagingly.
Right? No.
but,
I get it. But I think I think they went in not trying to have her like dethrone Judy Garland
Yeah.
by any stretch, because that's an impossible task.
That's something we talk about a lot on these when we talk about remakes is
absolutely.
how do you remake the iconic character? In some
Right.
ways you try, in some ways you don't.
Yeah, and I think in this one it's like let's kind of do our own thing, which they did, and I think it did underwhelm a little bit. I do wish they kind of let her off the chain a little bit more.
Yeah.
Before we go, I do kind of want to talk a little bit about the production design. Again,
Yeah.
about both of these films. We kind of get to the end, and so I had mentioned earlier about the idea of the ruby slippers being red because this was color, and
Yeah.
like this was like the rise of color in film. So, do you think that having that juxtaposition of the black and white and the color in the original, do you think that gives the movie more oomph than The Wiz because they actually were able to have that moment?
Yeah, I do. I think like I just always remember as a kid, you just like that shot into color.
Yeah.
And just like knowing that sometimes you'd think about The Wizard of Oz, like you had to explain like it's that movie where it starts off black and white but it goes to color.
Yeah.
Like it just there's something special about that. It's just it's something unique, and at that time you might have been expecting to watch a black and white movie the entire time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or like if you're watching this on VHS, back when we were kids, you had movies that were old and were black and white, and they don't ever change. That's what they are.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking as a kid sometimes like watching like something like the Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah.
You'd be like, man, I wonder what this would like. What does he look like in color? What is
Right.
that? And then in this movie, you get those answers, with Wizard of Oz. So it was just something that's, again, we use the word iconic a lot right now. We could do a drinking game off it, but
Right.
like, it's just you have to have things in like these classic movies that's like that just people are never going to forget, and that's and The Wiz doesn't have anything that can measure up to that. It's not. It wouldn't even be fair. Like if The Wiz started off in black and white and went to color, it would not have any effect.
Yeah.
Because movies are in color at this time. They couldn't do it.
Right, and also just you're right. Like at that time, it's like you do have to wonder. I mean, obviously, you and I weren't alive in 1939 to watch this. Like, watch The Wizard of Oz, and experience that in the theater for the first time. Be like, whoa! Like, what is
heck?
What
And
is
it's bright.
this? And it's bright.
It's
yeah, it's
color.
Technicolor, baby. It is Technicolor, and it's just like, whoa! And then so I do agree. Like it has that iconic hit, even though we weren't there in 1939 to feel it. But I also agree that it wouldn't have had the same effect in The Wiz.
Right.
Even though it was if they were trying to copy the same story, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, but we'll say though, like I do love, like you mentioned, I want to make sure you talk about both movies too, because I mean. I think we spent a lot of time on The Wiz because everybody just knows The Wizard of Oz.
Right.
But many people here listening might not have watched The Wiz as nearly as much. But in The Wiz, it does like a great job, I think, like you said, of varying the settings and stuff. But when I watch The Wizard of Oz, even though it's like I've seen it 1,000 times, I still have so much appreciation for like it feels like they just went so big for
Yeah.
that time.
Oh yeah.
And like the craftsmanship of Munchkin Town,
Right.
of just like the forest with the trees that can like and the apples that like they're throwing them at you, and
Yeah.
the character design of the Winkies and the flying monkeys, like it's all just seems so high end
Yeah.
for back then. It's really impressive, and like I said, I think the Wiz did a great job too of individualizing it more and finding a different niche.
Yeah. I think you can honestly say you could see the shade of green, emerald, the shade of yellow, and the shade of red that they use in the Wizard of Oz, and and instantaneously connect that
Yeah.
to the Wizard of Oz. Just I could see it in my mind.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just those three shades of those three colors, and they use them so uh, effectively
Yeah.
in the original Wizard of Oz to connect that to your brain, connect that to the zeitgeist. I think it is kind of insane, like how. I'm not gonna say before its time, because that's not really what I mean. I more mean just how kind of catching that lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
And how this movie really is something that can be as iconic as people believe it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there's obviously, as we've talked about in the past, with certain movies where it's like, oh, this people hold this movie, X movie or Y movie, in such high regard. We
Right.
kind of talked about it with Casablanca.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, where it's like, you went in having seen Casablanca, and I've obviously built up Casablanca so much
Right.
in your mind, and it delivered. I think
did.
Wizard of Oz is another one of those movies that would deliver.
Yeah.
On that iconic feeling of what people believe it to be.
Yeah. And that's we got to give props to try to remake a movie like that or put your own spin on it.
Yeah.
I think the Wiz had maybe a little bit safer than like I guess barbed wire because it is coming
right.
off a stage so that knew what it was successful.
Yeah.
But
Well, and I think the other part of it too, kind of going back to the overall reason why they made this, and I think this conversation has not changed my mind in any way, shape, or form that it's purely a representation standpoint.
Yeah.
But you kind of talk about some of those great moments in the Wizard of Oz. I do think there are some really great iconic moments in the Wiz, and I think for me one of the best, really, and this is kind of going back to a villain that we said doesn't have the weight of the original, and that is Eveline. And once she is defeated in the Wiz, that whole design of the sweatshop,
yeah.
Which ultimately is a metaphor for slavery,
Sure,
and
absolutely.
like the freedom of slavery, and how the Winkies design in that are so based on those stereotypical African American stereotypes,
Those
and
characters.
then those caricatures of what black people look like, and how they zip them away. And then they like reveal their true selves, and they Brand New Day. Brand New Day might actually be my favorite song in the movie.
That's true.
Like, I love Brand New Day. I love this whole dance number. I love the whole thing. But talking about iconic moments, like for me, that's a moment in this movie I will never forget.
Yeah.
In the Wiz.
Yeah, that was really effective.
Yeah.
And the warehouse changes too, which I just
Yeah.
think it's just the whole scene. Like that's that big transformation scene. So,
Yeah.
and it's funny because like I think there's a lot of things in this movie that I'm like, this is an improvement. Like you said, like everything I think was Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion, I think was all improvements, rounding out those characters.
Right.
That stuff with like rounding out the Winkies in a way, or that parallel, I guess, to their freedom and like what it really means. It
Right.
meant nothing really to the flying monkeys and stuff, but it means what shows what it means to these. They were much more her slaves than her guards.
Right. Yeah.
Like they kind of seemed like more of the guards in the Wizard of Oz, but like
Yeah. They were. Yeah.
So like so much more. Like I find this movie to have so many improvements upon the original, but I guess it doesn't add up. Like the sum of the parts isn't greater than the whole.
Right.
I still don't feel like it's not anywhere near as classic or good a movie, even
Right.
though I feel like they improved in so many areas. It's weird.
Yeah, no, I can agree, and like I said, I mean, at the time it was panned very
Yeah.
much, like as a film. I know there was a lot of negative feelings about Sidney Lumet being the director, like being more of a drama director coming in to do this musical, and I can agree and disagree maybe to a certain degree. If you
Yeah.
think of somebody like was it Adam Shankman who did Hairspray?
Yeah.
I mean I thought the job he did was great. I'm not sure exactly what else he's done,
Yeah.
but he seemed very, um, adept at doing musicals.
Right.
And maybe like Sidney Lumet, it was passable. You know what I mean? Like he's a professional enough or director that he could pull this off, and it works. And it has, to be fair, it has gained quite a cult following
Right.
since its release, and was kind of a flop. But like I said, I think if we kind of get down to kind of what we talk about on this podcast, like, oh, should this or shouldn't this have been made? Like, I definitely err on the side of, yeah, this should definitely have been made.
I think so too. I think, like I said, I don't think it's like, it's not just a copy and paste, like,
No.
cash grab.
Yeah.
I said they had a purpose in it. I think they're very effective on probably reaching the goals that they wanted in terms of representation and
Definitely.
finding metaphor,
Yeah.
through the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
So I think they accomplish all those goals. It's just, maybe it was just too big of a movie to remake or whatever, but it just isn't able to measure up. And unfortunately, you have to measure it when you do a remake.
Right. Well, especially with something as iconic as this. And it's funny. I think I read that somebody had at the time, a critic had called this like the last gasp of blaxploitation, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah.
Like, just as an art form in the 70s, and all of that. Like, it's kind of interesting, because it's like almost where it's like it's become so, like, at that time, like, this is like the mainstreaming of blaxploitation.
Sure.
In a way, you know what I mean? Yeah, like things like Shaft and stuff like that had kind of done that as well, but this felt almost like, maybe at the time, and this is me kind of maybe being a little too generous or whatever to the detractors, it just felt like that over commercialization of it.
Yeah.
But maybe in part of that might come down to like the Motown connection, which
Yeah.
obviously was huge in the 70s.
Right.
And I mean, for good reason. I
Yeah.
mean, the Motown sound was like, iconic in its own right.
Mhm.
So it totally makes sense that they would have done this
Yeah.
type of thing. But yeah, I agree. Having been a minute since I had revisited it, there are definitely things that I appreciated maybe more this time than I had in some of my previous viewings. And I can firmly say, yeah, I definitely think this deserved to be made.
All right, Rob. Well, we've established The Wiz might not be better than The Wizard of Oz, but it's still needed. It doesn't have to be better to be needed. So we can wrap up this conversation. We are done, but we don't want the audience to be done. If the audience stops listening now and just leaves, that would be like throwing a cold bucket of water on me and Rob.
Exactly.
We'll melt
We'll
away.
melt away.
And if we didn't melt, it's still not nice. We don't like cold things being thrown on us. But no, the audience, please take this opportunity to like the podcast if you haven't done so already. Subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a 5-star review, because if you do, we'll read it live on air someday. Don't forget, you can email us at carrayrob@gmail.com or reach out to us on Blue Sky at Car RayRob.
Absolutely. You can also now follow us on Facebook at Car RayRob Podcast Network. Doing some great posts on there. Love to get everybody involved. If there is a comment section on whatever platform you're on, by all means, let us know what you thought of The Wizard of Oz and The Wiz. Do you love both? Do you hate both? Do you like one or the other? We want to know about it. We will be back next week with a brand new episode of Say Hello to My Little Film, and it will be back to Ray.
Yep.
And I'm excited.
Good. I hope so. Remember, I'm going to inspire you this month.
I know. I remembered. I remember the inspiring words of that you said during the McCabe and Mrs. Miller episode. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what you got to bring for that. We will be back in 2 weeks with this month's episode of Hello Movies, My Old Friend, where Ray and I will be revisiting the John Candy romantic comedy Only the Lonely.
I remember loving this movie.
Me too. I am hoping, fingers crossed, this holds up. We will be back next month with another great episode of A Copy of a Copy, where Ray and I are going to be doing a new kind of remake that we have yet to do, and that is the foreign to U.S. version remake.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to be doing that with the Wim Wenders, who everybody knows I love, classic Wings of Desire, and the remake from 1998 starring Nick Cage. We're getting Nick Cage in here, and Meg Ryan, City of Angels, that iconic Goo Goo Dolls song that everybody knows.
Our last copy of a copy for 2025.
It will be our last copy of a copy, so you are not going to want to miss it. But until then, This is Car RayRob.
Where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob. And remember, be defined by the films you love, not the ones you hate.
A copy of a copy. 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 A copy of a copy.